The auditorium buzzed with excitement as families, friends, and hopeful contestants filled the seats. Bright stage lights swept across the room, creating a sense of anticipation that hung heavy in the air. Suddenly the music paused, and the host stepped forward with a smile, announcing the next performer. From the side of the stage, a small figure appeared. It was a little girl, just 9 years old, walking carefully toward the microphone stand. The crowd grew still, curious yet unsure of what to expect. Her name was Emma. Dressed in a simple white dress, she clutched the microphone with both hands, her fingers trembling slightly. The first thing the audience noticed wasn't her outfit or her shy smile, but the soft glimmer of light reflecting off her bald head. Chemotherapy had taken her hair, but it hadn't taken her spirit. A murmur rippled through the crowd as people realized they weren't just looking at another child contestant. They were witnessing something far more extraordinary. The host bent down gently and asked her name. "Temma," she said softly, her voice steady despite the weight in the room. 9 years old. Her eyes sparkled with innocence, but also with a depth beyond her years. The host asked what she would be singing, and Emma lifted her chin proudly, though her voice quivered when she answered, "A song I wrote. It's called Jesus, Hold My Voice. I just want to thank God for giving me one more day to sing." A hush fell over the audience. Many leaned forward in their seats, some clasped their hands over their hearts. The judges, who had seen countless performances, exchanged looks of quiet astonishment. No flashy costumes, no backup dancers, just a fragile little girl and her faith. Emma took a deep breath, her tiny chest rising and falling as if she were drawing strength from something unseen. She closed her eyes for a moment, whispered a prayer only she could hear, and then placed both hands firmly around the microphone. The room was so silent that even the sound of her breath seemed loud. Every eye was fixed on her, waiting, wondering if this delicate child could truly sing the song her heart carried. And then, with the courage of someone far older than her years, Emma lifted her head and prepared to begin. Emma's lips parted, and the first soft note of her song floated into the silence. It was delicate, almost fragile, like the voice of a bird singing against the wind. For a moment, the audience held its collective breath, afraid that the slightest sound would break the spell. Her words, "Jesus, hold my voice," came out in a trembling whisper, yet each syllable carried so much emotion that it seemed to echo in every heart listening. At first the melody was tender, almost uncertain, as if Emma herself wasn't sure if her body could carry her through. The chemotherapy had weakened her lungs, and every breath was precious, but her determination glowed in her eyes. She clutched the microphone tighter, and with each passing line, her voice grew stronger, steadier, and more radiant. It wasn't the voice of a polished professional, but it was something far rarer. It was the voice of truth, of a child singing straight from her soul. Halfway through the song, her small frame shuddered. She faltered, clutching at her chest as her voice cracked. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The judges leaned forward, concern flashing across their faces. For a fleeting second, it seemed as though the performance would collapse. But then Emma did something no one expected. She lifted her eyes toward the ceiling lights, her face bathed in their golden glow, and whispered audibly into the microphone, "Please hold me." The words weren't part of the lyrics, they were a prayer, a plea. And as if her faith breathed new life into her, her next note rang out pure, soaring higher and stronger than before. The frailty in her tone transformed into something powerful, angelic, almost otherworldly. The music didn't just fill the theater, it filled the hearts of everyone present. Tears glistened in the eyes of strangers, mothers held their children closer, and even the judges blinked rapidly, trying to compose themselves. By the final chorus, Emma wasn't just singing a song. She was pouring her very soul into every word, carrying her pain, her hope, and her gratitude in a voice that felt like it belonged to more than just one little girl. It felt like it belonged to all of humanity. The camera panned across the theater, capturing faces frozen in awe. A young woman in the front row pressed her hands against her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks as though Emma's fragile voice had touched a wound she never spoke about. In the middle rows, a man who looked hardened by life removed his cap and bowed his head, his eyes glistening with unexpected tenderness. For the first time that evening, it wasn't just a performance, it was a moment of unity, as if every person in the room had been invited into Emma's prayer. On stage, her small figure seemed illuminated by something beyond the bright spotlights. Her voice, now steady and unshakably pure, resonated in a way no microphone could amplify. It was as though the song was not only hers, it belonged to everyone listening, carrying their fears, their memories, their silent hopes. The judges sat motionless, their usual poise shattered. One clasped his hands tightly in front of his mouth, eyes glassy with emotion. Another shook her head slowly, overwhelmed, while tears rolled freely down her cheeks. They had witnessed countless singers, but Emma's voice carried something none of them had ever heard before, a fragile truth wrapped in unshakable faith. As Emma reached the final verse, something unexplainable happened in the room. It felt like the air grew thicker, heavier, yet softer, as though the whole theater had been wrapped in invisible arms. Many in the audience clasped the hands of the people beside them, strangers no longer strangers. Emma's song had become more than music. It was a thread stitching broken hearts together, a living prayer echoing through every corner of the hall. When she finally sang the last line, her voice trembling but clear, the silence that followed was deafening. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. The world seemed to pause in reverence for the little girl who had just reminded them of the strength that can live inside weakness, and the beauty that can bloom from pain. For a long, sacred second after the final note, the theater stood frozen in silence. Emma lowered the microphone, her small chest heaving as she struggled to catch her breath. She glanced nervously at the judges, then at the sea of faces before her, almost as if she feared she hadn't been enough. And then, it happened. A single clap broke the silence, sharp and certain. It was followed by another, then another, until the entire audience erupted in applause. The sound swelled like a tidal wave, crashing over Emma in waves of love and admiration. People leapt to their feet, some cheering, others sobbing openly, their voices uniting into a roar of celebration. It wasn't just applause for a performance, it was applause for her courage, her faith, her sheer will to keep singing when the world told her she couldn't. On the judges' panel, one of them leaned forward, tears streaming down his cheeks. His voice cracked as he said, "On Emma." She stood again at the microphone, her smile radiant, her small hands steady. The audience erupted, and Emma simply nodded, whispering another quiet prayer before beginning to sing again. Her voice, still delicate but filled with unshakable strength, carried one simple message: even the smallest voice can make a difference. Even in the darkest battles, courage and faith can shine through. And even one child, singing a heartfelt song, can touch millions of hearts, reminding the world of the power of hope, love, and humanity. Emma's story became more than a performance. It became a testament. A 9-year-old girl facing unimaginable trials had reminded everyone that life's true miracles are often found not in what we achieve, but in the love, bravery, and faith we share with others. And in that, Emma had changed the world, one note at a time.